Blog Talk Radio. Hello from my heart, everybody. We have another great edition of Transitions to Transformation radio show, and tonight's very special guest is Elizabeth Robinson, author of the new book, There Are No Goodbyes. Elizabeth is an intuitive psychologist, and in 1992, professional counselor, wife, and mother Elizabeth Robinson suddenly experiences an extraordinary awakening of latent abilities to see, sense, and know beyond anything her mainstream life acknowledges as reality. She is shaken and deeply challenged by this, forcing her to question her conventional life in marriage. Elizabeth then faces a fierce backlash from her clinical department in light of the compelling evidence for the power and impact of her new insights and abilities. The sudden death of her beloved father becomes the catalyst for Elizabeth to follow her higher spiritual calling to North America. Taking her teen daughter Jessica, their lives, however, would be irrevocably changed by the traumatic deaths of two teenage girls and close friend and mentor, eminent Harvard psychiatrist, Professor John Mack. Remarkably, their visitations and moving communications from the other side call Elizabeth beyond the traumatic nature of their passing and into an extraordinary world, a far greater and more transcendent reality of higher spiritual truths. It is there that she discovers her personal and spiritual destiny. Through Elizabeth's intimate story and the profound communications from the other side, we are given a deeper understanding of ourselves, our lives, and life after life. There Are No Goodbyes takes us on a fascinating personal journey and calls us all to step forward onto a far greater pathway of evolutionary discovery. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Robinson. How are you tonight, Elizabeth?
Oh, Susan, I'm just really so touched and feel so humbled that you reached out to me and asked me to share this moment with you. And, with the potential we all have, these beautiful, inspiring conversations. So it's my joy to be here and my joy to send some Australian energy and Australian sunshine up to you guys up there in the United States and wherever you are in the world listening, actually. So it's a great joy to meet you and be here with you.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate you taking out the time to talk with everybody. And one question that popped into my mind was, what exactly is a intuitive psychologist?
I call myself a psychotherapist, not a psychologist. I actually studied, my degree was in counseling and psychology, but I didn't come out as a psychologist. Psychologists don't have a lot of training often in counseling. So, but what I am able to do is marry the psychological, so my work and my skill base that I have in really my professional background and all the experience that I've had, which is now over 30 years, and marry that with my my abilities to see, sense, and know. So instead of kind of taking a very long time, maybe a year or 6 months to work through an issue, I can pinpoint it very forensically. I kind of laugh to people and say that I'm a little bit like a Sherlock Holmes, when I work with people, which can be quite striking and quite, amazing to people. And it's just very normal to me, my way of operating. So, it's really about me being able to sense using my body as an instrument, for example, using my inner vision to be able to see what influences there may be that are leading to certain things happening in a person's life. It's like that.
It's amazing. It really is amazing. It's a wonderful gift that you have to help people. And I'm just reading this off of your website. It's sarayawellbeing.com, and that's spelled Saraya, wellbeing.com. And I'm just reading this. It says, Elizabeth interprets the manifestation of unwellness within the body as unseen emotional programming within the subatomic level of your cellular body. According to a healing modality spontaneously unveiled to Elizabeth, our life experiences influence the greater functioning of our health and well-being at a cellular level, influencing cellular programming and altering the original cellular frequencies. In turn, this affects the optimum cellular directive, affecting optimum cellular functioning, leading to emotional and physical unwellness. Well, I can definitely relate to that, Elizabeth. I had been diagnosed with several major diseases, MS being one of them. MS, cancer, I had uterine cancer. I had it 3 times. Yeah, and also underactive thyroid. Basically, I had a lot of issues in my tissues.
That's an amazing expression. I've never heard that, but it's so true, in the sense of what I have discovered. But it's, what that is, I call that a story playing out in your life. And we look beyond the diagnosis, and we look beyond the prognosis. So that the way that I would look at that, even though I have a clinical background and I've worked in medical settings for many years, and I don't discredit any of that or mainstream science or Western medicine. What I believe is we're capable of so much more, and we're capable of so much a wider definition of the influences on our body and on our minds and in our hearts, actually. So it's interesting to me that you have come with this loading, we might call loading, that has clearly influenced the cellular directive. And we know that epigenetics, through epigenetics now, in this exciting new field of science, is telling us that the environment influences the switching on and off of our genes. And I think this is one of the most exciting things that has happened to people like myself and all of those people out there who are listening, who are able to have energy transmissions, and they're able to see and sense into the body, or they're experiencing something beyond what can be measured. What epigenetics is showing us, which is a great enthusiastic discovery really, is that our environment shapes and determines the way that we are in the world, the way that we experience ourselves in the world, and our health ultimately, and our happiness ultimately. So it also means that we can have an impact on that. And, I think that that's unlimited. I certainly have worked with many people and have some really interesting results, and not that is what you look for, but I think that's what mainstream science wants to see. And we're not discounting that here. We're just saying that there's so much more than what we ever dreamed was possible. But it's an interesting thing, because I've known you now for, we've been chatting before the show just a little bit, and here on the airwaves. And one of the things that strikes me about you is that you've got just a gigantic heart, and you've got this beautiful, like a sparkling personality, and a very beautiful giving person. And it's always interesting to me how someone like yourself can have all of this loading, almost like an anchor, that then gives you an opportunity to know yourself and certainly know your body. And my sense is that one of the reasons why, if you don't mind me sharing.
Oh, yeah, it's okay. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going down a track that you don't want me to talk about in this moment, you say, hold on a minute here.
That's okay. My life is an open book. It's all right. I'll give you a poetic license.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. So, it's interesting that my sense is that you're here this lifetime to know about the body and to really come to be in the body, because embodiment for a lot of souls, especially who are from parts of other dimensions that are maybe from, we might call it higher evolutionary places. So that doesn't mean that they're any better or any greater or anything like that. It just means that as a service, coming back into embodiment is sometimes foreign to people, and sometimes it's hard for people to acclimatize here. But one of the things that we do here is we learn through our body, and it's really about getting in touch with our body through nutrition, through emotions, through exercise and movement, and allowing ourselves to explore life through our body, which is a really beautiful thing. So one of the things that I feel is that you're really being anchored, that a lot of your learning this time is around your body. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. You hit the nail right on the head, Elizabeth. Oh, my gosh. I ever since I was a little girl, I think I was around 6, I always said I got dropped off on this planet. It's like a cosmic taxi cab just pulled over, opened the door, and threw me out. So that's how I felt. I've always thought out of the box. I really, really out of the box, but it's okay. I mean, it's part of me, and I made peace with it now, and I love that part of me. And it's just a lot of times, with the thyroid issue I had, is basically holding back my emotions and not speaking my truth, and I became very stuck there. I'm still working on it, but I've come a long way. But it's just And
Susan, I think that this is what you're describing here is exactly, so many people around the world will be able to relate to this. Certainly the clients that I see around the world, there are so many people here who feel a sense of not belonging here. And I don't mean from that we can say clinically or psychologically. A lot of people who have certain dysfunctions in their families or in their lives might have a story around not feeling a connection, or feeling a sense of separation, feeling a sense of sadness because of those directly those direct influences. But what I'm talking about is beyond those influences. Certainly this is something that I'm hearing for decades now, and certainly I had myself, and a feeling of not feeling like this is home, and feeling like I had different thoughts and ideas and experiences than others did, and that they often listened to me, that something was normal to me, and looked at me as if there was kind of some strangeness about me. And of course what this does to us all is give us a sense of shame about who we are, and so we feel the separation even more profoundly. So one of the things that I have come to do with people more than anything is work on that shame story, so that we can find the truth of who we are and express ourselves beyond the shame, to show up and really feel at home and comfortable in our body, place boundaries in our life, being able to say no instead of overgiving. These kind of things is what being human is about, and the learning that we have here in embodiment.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I used to have trouble saying no. And one thing I've become very good at lately is saying, well, not now, maybe later. It's the best thing. Right. Yeah.
I often say to people that when we grow like that, like you have in terms of being able to go from, overgiving and overdoing to kind of, hope for the outcome of being that you're more acceptable, or that you're safer, you're more safer, more love, you're more loved. Or experience a sense of no longer feeling rejected. What happens in the end of that is that when we come to grow and to change tracks, if you like, or change frequency from the lower local story, is what I call it, to the expression expression of the grand version self, then we are our power. We are our uniqueness. We're accepting of ourselves and we're dwelling in that place. And I say to people, I like to be fun and playful, and I often say to people, it must be like all those beautiful guides and loved ones of ours are sitting watching the movie of us here, and they're looking through the veil with their big popcorn boxes, and they're kind of crunching on that popcorn and looking at their wristwatch, and they're saying, I wonder if she's going to get it this time, or
yeah,
I want,
it is. Yeah. I mean, it's, I'm telling you, it's really mind over matter, and that's, it took about 5 years for me to really absorb it. I always tell this story of when I used to work for the Postal Service, and I loved my job and I loved the people I work with, but there was always this element of what do you call that? I would say just a lot of backbiting, a lot of competition, and I was getting anxiety about that. And, and that's when the MS symptoms started to appear. And it was almost like avoidance. I didn't want to deal with work. And I got myself so sick that I had to leave work. I had MS and cancer, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And finally I was, I couldn't deal with it anymore. And I used to go up to that big menacing brick building. I used to stand in front of it and say, I know what my day's going to be like. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to be short of my register. Sure enough, not even 10 minutes later, that happened.
And that's what I call, Susan, that's what I refer to as the lower local story. And if we can give the listeners a little bit of a technique that I use, which is not anything complex, and perhaps many other people do this, is just that in these moments where we're feeling the feelings and what I call inhabiting the place of the lower local story of ourselves, we might stop before we go into that building and ask ourselves a really potent question. And the question might be something like this: what is the emotional age that is the part of me that perceives that she is not good enough to go in there and do the right thing, or that she's going to have people come down on her, that she is entering an environment that is really toxic, and that she has to stay there in a powerless way? And do you get a sense of a number that might correspond with an age that is the emotional part of you responding to that environment in that way?
You know what? Actually, I did. Like I mentioned before, when I was 6 years old, I felt like I was dropped off. Like from the proverbial cosmic taxi cab. It was around 6 years old that I felt like I wasn't good enough. That it was really very different from everybody, and that there must be something wrong with me because I didn't think the way most people did, and I didn't do things the way most people did. So. I would stay in my room for hours and draw, and I became quite the artist. And,
and it's a very, one has to learn to avoid, or one has to learn to withdraw from the environment in order to be able to cope. And of course, that's very toxic. And of course, what that does is set us up to believe that we're not worthy. And this is the shame story, what I call the lower local story, which is fear-based and shame-based. And we have these environments, these work environments, which I know a lot of your listeners will relate to, that are like this. And whether they're environments, whether you're a mechanic or a postal worker, whether you're a lawyer, or whether you're in corporate, or whatever you're doing, it's all the same, because those environments are usually very toxic, and they mirror to you exactly the kind of thing that you would have got in your own home. So a feeling experience, what I call a feeling experience of the lower local story of you. You're not good enough, you don't fit in, is a feeling, and competition is rife in these environments, because competition is the cornerstone of the lower local story. And we all start to get on the striving platform, and we strive and we perceive that we're striving for the new car, or to pay the bills, or the mortgage. But what we're actually striving for is acceptance, is belonging, is love, and a sense of value. And it's profound to me, all always, when I hear stories like yours, that we spend so much of our beautiful, precious years and days and months in environments that don't see us, and we're not experiencing the truth of who we are. So it's no wonder that your cells responded to that. And I see that as the environment reflecting to you your lower local story, which is always, it gives us a feeling of ourselves that has a lot of dense frequency. So a lot of pain, a lot of I'm not good enough, a lot of shame story. And so literally we're dwelling within a frequency that is far more dense. And if we're talking about you coming from the afterlife or other dimensions, beautiful places that have love flowing and beautiful transparency, and it's not hard work, everyone sees each other, everyone loves you and accepts you. It's kind of like a culture shock when I look at little babies and I think to them, they're so precious, I feel like cuddling every one of them I come across. But it's like, to me, I realize that precious soul must be so shell-shocked coming down here into the families, into the disorder and the chaos that we often have in our lives. So, it's good that you've got away from there and now you're doing what you're doing, which is really of greater benefit, and it's bridged you into your grand version self, what I call the grand version self.
Thanks. Yeah, it took me a long time to get here. And I had to get rid of a lot of fears, but I do still feel fear at times and depression, and every time I feel that, I hear, I've been taught to say, cancel, clear, get the fear out of here. Or, yeah.
And Susan, another thing is that, and this is what I created a new model that I work in the last 3 years, because 3 years ago I hit a ceiling in my life and I really felt that there was nothing that I could do with anybody else that was really taking me beyond that ceiling. So I developed a model of living and of understanding life, and a way that you can intervene in situations like that. From my model, which I call the lucidity process, and for those of you, very soon my new website's launching, and I'm sorry that it's not available in this moment, but my new website is wingsofwisdom.tv. And if people go to my Soraya Wellbeing website, which I hope will be swapped over to wingsofwisdom.tv by the time people start downloading your interview, they will see the lucidity process is what I've called this kind of framework or model of perceiving things. And what I would recommend for those of you, people who are listening who actually experience something like that, I believe we go into lower local story. We're revisiting our small version of ourselves because we've got an active file. So one of the experiences has been triggered, one of the patterns has been triggered in the lower local story. We start to feel disconnected. We start to feel sad. We might feel, we've got this clinical word for it called depression or anxiety. If we take those labels off, which I'm really not into pathologizing, I'm really not into labeling, but we do that so that everyone knows in the out there land of listening land knows what we're talking about. So what I recommend is that that either your child self or your teen self, your inner child self or your teen self have a need that is unmet at that moment. So we can have dialogue, we can do some writing, we can do some visualizing and holding of that little one and being present with her like a parent would, or parenting her, for example, in a way that you weren't parented. So in this way, we can shift from feeling that aloneness and that disconnection into making ourselves available to the part of us that feels like that and bringing her home to our heart. And so, yes, you can do all those other things like, I'm disconnecting from this, but really being present with that part of you who's feeling the feelings and really sitting with those feelings and knowing that you're reaching into that darker place or that more dense frequency and reminding her of how precious and incredibly magnificent she is, and just really being present and being mindful of what part is being activated and doing what I call the bridging techniques, listening to music, being present with her, saying things that are really pointing out her specialness, an array of things, and we haven't got the time to go into it. But just really establishing a sense of presence, focusing on your breathing, and taking care of her will help to assist to bring you out of that dark place and into the light that you already are.
Wow, that is amazing. That is truly amazing. I could feel healing coming from you right now, and it's amazing because I always wondered to myself, well, where is this fear coming from? So it's really, it's actually active files, cellular files.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I call it, I say, well, what mind does, because what we do is we have this addiction to busyness in our environment, whether it's Australia or whether it's England or wherever it is, America, Canada, wherever it is. In the Western world, we're addicted to being busy, and we have massive epidemic of stress. And so what this does is that it puts us into a contracted state, and we are not breathing well. We're activating our stress system in our body. It's like that we're stacking in so many things in our day and trying to be superheroes in our day. And we've really shifted the goalposts. We're really not playing the same game anymore. It's really quite alarming to see how many people are trying to make it through on this striving lower local story world that we're living in, and kind of, as my gorgeous colleague Brene Brown calls it, hustling for love and acceptance, and I call it really just being on the striving platform, trying to be the glorious we are and demonstrate or gain a sense of glorious that we are, when actually all along we're just beautiful and precious the moment because we're actually being. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to be anything. We are intrinsically of God, and we are our greatness right there. We don't have to prove it or give away that to anybody to make them believe in us or to see that we're of value. We just have to dwell in our value. And when we teach our children and we teach and express this to each other, we can move out of that lower story self and just show up as love to each other, and not be triggered because we've actually worked on those old files, and Secretary of the Mind has pushed them away in the closed filing cabinet, and we can really be in our world and have a simple, enjoyable, fulfilling existence instead of kind of filling our world up with all of these possibilities to be seen or to be loved or to measure up. Let's all pray for a beautiful world where we see each other as the God that we truly are.
Oh, wow. That's right. The God within. It's so true. And it's just amazing, the transformation. And I mean, already just talking with you, I feel like a huge weight had been lifted off of me because I had so much trauma in my life, a lot of dysfunction in my family, and I was living with somebody, like I was discussing earlier, before the show, I was living with somebody for 9 years, and he was slowly giving me antifreeze, with, he would prepare milk for me, and and I actually drank it, and halfway down it was like a pinkish color, and it tasted really sweet. It was the best milk I ever tasted, but I kind of questioned why I got to half of the milk that it was the color it was, and he just blew up at me. And after being with him for 9 years, he never blew up at me, never spoke to me disrespectfully. I couldn't even repeat what he said to me on this show, but to say that was scary would be an understatement. And right then and there, I knew that I had to go. And I had a holographic experience before that where I was in my computer room and I had seen a hologram in a door, and it flashed 3 times, and it was showing me that he was doing this to me, but I didn't want to believe it. I got angry, and I didn't want to believe it, and I said, go away, go away. But then sure enough, that night I got sick, and then I made a very quick trip to Florida, and I've been here ever since. And
you were saying that you got tested as well, and so it's not just a kind of an imagined thing, that you were tested and that you had high results, high levels of certain toxins in your body and poisons in your body that relate to that antifreeze. Is that correct?
Yes, I had antimony, cadmium, and arsenic in copious amounts. And they're all components of antifreeze. And you know what the really wild thing was, that night when I arrived in Florida, there were 2 investigative shows on that my parents usually didn't watch. And it was like a medical mystery type of show, 2 different ones. And both were about these women's husbands poisoning them. And I just stood there with my mouth open, and I said, wow, is that the universe trying to tell me something or what? And I've been numb ever since. I can feel anger, I can feel extreme happiness, but I can't cry. I mean, I don't know what happened.
It's the way that I'm going to speak to that is this. This is what I feel to share with you, and perhaps we'll make it relate to many people that are listening or will download the program, is that I believe that this is a metaphor for both toxic relationship and the toxic world we live in, even in our families, that would have us believe or consume, as a metaphor. Yours was perhaps literal, but we're talking about as a metaphor. Your experience really is about how we try to survive through a medium within which doesn't honor us in any way, and in fact annihilates us. And this is the core of what I see as the shame story, the alteration of the programming. So you come in as this gorgeous, beautiful, radiant soul that is from this environment, and we're all from this environment that is loving and transparent, but we have things to learn. This is what I've learned from the afterlife, and I talk about this in my book, There Are No Goodbyes. And one of the things is that we come in as this beautiful, fragrant garden of these other places that we dwell, and we come into embodiment, and we live within these toxic families, and many families actually have dysfunctional programming and relate to each other in a dysfunctional way, and are cruel and mean to each other. And what we do is cultivate this lower story programming that has us believe that we are deeply unacceptable. And if we come in knowing and being in this incredible light that we are, and this incredible, beautiful, magnificent soul that we are, it always stands to reason to me that it takes a lot of energy and effort from the shadow side to really contract us into this state of smallness, like a jackhammer. There's all of these influences from the childhood that would have us feel annihilated, would have us experience ourselves as something small and insignificant. It takes a lot of effort to do that, right? So if you go from there, and we know, what we know is these internal perceptions and programs actually draw us into experiences, further and further experiences of ourselves. When we're out looking for someone to love us, or we can end up with someone who will speak down or be mean or doesn't understand us, or in some cases try and annihilate us. So what this is telling me, without being caught up in whether he did it or whether he didn't, and how we can, that's really irrelevant. What we're actually saying is, what is it, the learning in this experience for you, and what stands out to me is this concept that you have at a cellular level that you've taken on, that in some way you are denying yourself the life that you have, that the radiance that you are, that it's time for you to really inhabit a place that is a lived experience of your permission to have love, to be loved, to really embody that in every cell, to call forward an experience of yourself that is so beyond that programming, while at the same time reassuring and reworking that program and translating that as an illusion to that part of you who perceives that as true, because it's absolutely horrendous to think that someone wanted to poison you. It's horrendous to think that someone wants to annihilate you and take your life. This is truly the most disturbing, the most horrific trauma that we can go through. And to think that this happens all over the world, and it happens to many women all over the world and some men, but a lot of the time it's women who are experiencing this sort of type of thing. And so it's really time for us all to take back our right to be loved and to be loved and overcome ourselves, this lower story conditioning and the shame story, and to climb out and to take back our right to be loved and be loved in the world and be an expression of the light of who we truly are.
Wow. That is absolutely amazing, Elizabeth. I can't agree more. That lower story had controlled my life, you know, I'd say a great portion of it. And you know, once I decided to break away from the person that was hurting me, I started to love myself again, and it's just been an amazing experience. You know, I call it journey back to self. And
yes.
And one of the other things that happened to me was I was sexually abused when I was a child by someone close to the family. And
very painful.
But I mean, I allowed myself to feel intense anger and intense happiness. But it was weird because I couldn't feel sadness, and I couldn't.
Yes. And you know what I say about that, and I want to speak to two things there, is that when we're feeling numb, it just means that we've gone into a state within which we are avoiding feeling the feelings. And one of the things that we do is allow ourselves to go into what I call the angry room, right? The angry room is a perceived level of power. So it's usually... And it's healthy to feel angry. It's not healthy to express it in a toxic way, but it's really healthy to feel all feelings. You know, we have a society that calls some feelings positive feelings and some feeling negative feelings. I'm asking and invoking us to change that right now. All feelings are feelings, right? Emotion. So what we do, however, is often stay in the angry place, in the angry room, in the expression of the anger, because the sadness is a deeper feeling. I often say to people that it's often the emotional teen that feels the anger because they're protecting the child from feeling the sadness. It's a way that I just describe it to people. So if you can imagine, if you stay in the angry room, it can be the teenager who has stepped in front of the child who's sad. And if we can just arrive into a deeper feeling and love the teen and allow the sadness to come through, what is beyond the sadness is the most incredible loving compassion for self and others. If we can just have ourselves, if in the moment of that anger we say, what else is this below? What else is there? If we go out of this angry room like a cloud, if we go through the cloud, what's the next layer? What's below that? And we usually feel the sadness. And the sadness often for people, the vulnerability, that deep vulnerability feels so disempowering. And it actually is really empowering. We need to accept that we're going to cry, that we're going to have moments feeling this vulnerable state, and this is human, and it's okay to feel these feelings, and it's okay to have someone to hold your hand in that space and say, I love you, even expressing the tears. I'm here for you. You are loved, and I am here for you no matter what, and I won't leave you. I will sit with you in the tears and the joy, you know, and that's what we didn't get usually as a child, and that's what we can do to ourselves. And so when we're feeling that sadness or feeling in that dark place, to really be in what I call witness posture. You're really mindful and look and see what age is the part of ourselves needing us at that moment, and tend to ourselves instead of attending to other people, and say to our little ones, I am here for you, I am present for you, I'm not going to pick up my phone, I'm not going to cook the dinner until my need is taken care of. And they're going to feel instantly better. There's an instant an instant opening to the God layers, the God expression, the loving expression at a cellular level in that moment when we feel heard. It's a great blessing.
Wow. That is really amazing. And it's I'm finding it to be true. In more recent times, I have been learning to say no, but I'll be like, well, not now, but later. First, just like you said, take care of what you need to do first, and and if you want to, do that, do that extra thing. But wow, yeah, I'm just listening, and I'm in awe. I'm kind of like gobsmacked right now.
Well, I love that, and I was saying to you before the show, I believe that it's time to bring back these beautiful conversations and have really illuminating conversations, because we've lost our way on this planet, and it's not about condemning each other, it's creating peace. It's about seeing ourselves for the wounds that we are and for the wonder that we are, and not operating from the wounds and being judgmental and competitive, but cultivating a way of living and loving that is deeply compassionate. And to do that, we need to be developing a sense of witness of our life and witness and emotional mastery. And to do that, we must really see what's at the core of holding ourselves back from this beautiful potential that we are. And one of the things that I want to do, I've got on my new website, Wings of Wisdom, I have what's called a Wings of Wisdom Club Lounge. And in the Club Lounge, I'm also going to be doing events online and podcasts and things like that. So, I look forward to doing those because I want to reach more people as you're doing. And I want to take this moment, Susan, to thank you. And thank you for the courage and the boldness. And thank you for your radiance and your courage to step forward, no matter whether you're unwell or whether whatever it is. You're showing up to everybody, and you're providing this platform for growth and learning and awakening. And it's a beautiful thing. So thank you for having the courage to show up as you and provide this where people can download this and maybe being inspired by something that you say or your guest or me, that I might have said or say. It is my absolute joy to have a moment and have this beautiful conversation with you and everybody through the world who will listen to this. And I feel it's a great pleasure and a great gift, you doing what you're doing and everybody out there doing their part to make this world a better place.
Oh, thank you so very much, Elizabeth. That means a lot to me. We all go through things in our lives that are traumatic, and I have to say I chose to take a bad, not so good thing and turn it into something really good, because I figure, there's a reason why we all go through something, is because we need to identify and share with others so that we may kind of like branch out and be like this network of us, like big support network. And
yes.
I feel good. Ever since I started this show, I've been feeling really good that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and I'm on the right, on the right track. And
yes, and we know when we're on the right track because we're feeling less and less contracted and sad and experiencing ourselves in that lower story. The grand version self, it's not as though we're going to never have moments of sadness or never have things that confront us, because that would be just too easy. I wish that we all had that. Wouldn't it be cool?
Yes.
But really, it's about learning to navigate through the moments of lower story that we can come home and bridge back into the grand version, where we can show up as love and show up in a compassionate, loving way to ourselves, firstly, and each other. And that's what you're doing with this radio show. So from everybody who's listening today, a big thank you, Susan, for you being your radiant self. And through all of that trauma that you shared with us so bravely today, you can we're experiencing and seeing both that lower story you and the beautiful grand version self who's sitting here interviewing me, and I feel a great sense of joy in my heart that I've had this time together today.
Oh, you and me both, Elizabeth. This has just been very healing for me. It's not often that that I talk about my story, but I felt comfortable enough with you to do it. You know, I knew as soon as I started talking with you earlier before the show, you know, I knew right then and there, I knew I felt the healing from you already, and it's nice to have somebody say that I'm doing good, because for a long time, everything that I did got put down, or I was told I was too out of the box. So it's a nice change. It's a really nice change. So thank you very much, Elizabeth. This is just great. You know, I just had a question about PTSD. Now that's a really deep form of trauma too.
Yes.
And
I have a different. I'm going to let you ask your question, but I have a very different version of it because I'm able to look from a metaphysical point of view. So ask away. I have this really bad habit of jumping in before someone asks a question. So I'm going to be very good and just sit here and let you ask a question.
Oh, that's okay. I love it, Elizabeth, because sometimes I get a little godsmacked, you know, especially during this interview, because I got a lot of aha moments. So it's good. It's almost like having a senior moment sometimes. So I'm glad you jump in. But I was just wondering because, my husband presently, who's a sweetheart, he has been through hell and back in the Army. His best friend took a bullet that was meant for him, and he's been having survivor's guilt and trauma, and not only trauma from the service, but he had a lot of trauma growing up too. So I mean, God bless him, he's just an amazing man, and despite all this trauma, he has such a big heart and a huge capacity to love. That's why I married him. He never stopped loving. You know, he's just an amazing man.
It's it defies any capacity that my mind and heart have to think of our beautiful citizens having to go off to war, and because intrinsically I believe that is totally and absolutely incongruent to who we are, and I believe that we are in our innate form deeply loving beings. And so to actually be sent in without much training and without knowing, really having any clue of what it's going to be like in that place we call war or a war zone, to be able to send someone in there who's 18 or 20 and especially a beautiful loving heart and open heart like your partner, and then have them show up in a way that they might in the life of somebody is extraordinary to me. And then what's more extraordinary is to expect them to come home and not be absolutely affected beyond belief by that experience. So one of the things, recently I actually worked with someone who had gone through the Vietnam War. And for all these decades, he had never, ever, ever told a single person, not his wife, not anybody, about the moment where he had to shoot one of the Viet Cong, one of the Vietnamese, who was actually a highly decorated officer. And in the session that we did together, and I've worked with many people with all manner of, gone through, a wide variety of trauma. And what I know is that time is not linear. So that when we have the fabric of time stays with us, if you like, as a pocket of experience that we often ride within. So what we might, if we put my clinical hat on, and people talk clinically about post-traumatic stress, one of the key factors is, and you'll know this being with your loved one, is that they act as though they're still there in that time frame. And the reality, all that influence and all that pressure and all that fear and all of that experience is relived. And what I know is it is relived because we are really time travelers intrinsically. And this is something that, we're kind of seeking to understand how we can travel in time. And I have had the great privilege of being able to move in time, space, location, not physically, but my consciousness, so much so that I'm able to see, and I can't prove that, and I don't need to. I've never done any research, but time and time again, when I work with people, I'm able to define things and explain things from that other perspective and that are true. And what we know is that, various governments have used remote viewing, and remote viewing is something that's been scientifically established. And, we've got a lot of people coming forward and talking about things like remote viewing, which is a similar thing, and being able to send your consciousness to certain time, space, location. So with post-traumatic stress, what I believe happens is that they are there in that time, space, location because their consciousness is re-experiencing it, because we are not fully embodying this time, space, location, whether it's Florida in the supermarket or whether it's like a tire blowout that he hears and then he's back, having his friend die, whatever the trigger is. What I know is that we lose we lose presence. And I've experienced people. I had worked with a doctor recently who was actually losing presence in the consultation, and he was going out of his body, and he was having a dissociative experience. And what that means really is that he was no longer present. He was in another time-space location beyond the present moment in this location, which was actually in Australia. And so what I did for him is invite him to know where he was and be in presence and, feel his feet and feel the feet attached to the ground. And one of the things with post-traumatic stress is that we have to work to remind them of their presence and look at the breathing, focus on their body, the fact that they're here, where they are. But the core thing that I guess I'm speaking to here is to be able to work with that corridor, that energy time, that time corridor, to be able to not only work psychologically with it, but work energetically with it, so that the person is doesn't have an escape hatch, if you like, an open time-space corridor, which is like a corridor through time that is an active story. And so what I do is, and what I know and what I'm really interested in actually is not kind of living in like I might say, a woo-woo land of all this, but to really understand it from a very grounded perspective, because I do come from that and my degree is from that world and I live in that world. I want to know how we can affect change and affect people's experience of themselves in the world. Let's throw the doors open and see what this metaphysical world is and how it impacts upon us in a really grounded, logical way. And that means that certainly I've been privy to being able to see that there is a leaving the body. We know that people dissociate in those moments of trauma and reliving the trauma. But what I believe happens also is that we have an access point that we go back to, because there is a time-space corridor that is still open and active. And it's the same when I work with people who, when I see an opening, like a billowing out of an experience of other time, space, location. The way that I work with other times of embodiment, and I don't call it past lives, I call it other times of embodiment, because what's actually happening is that they are experiencing the influence as if it is currently happening. And what I mean by that is that, to me, as a therapist, as a counselor, and as an intuitive therapist, is working with them, I am able to see that opening up. And sometimes, if it's a battlefield, I can hear the clinking of the swords, or I can hear it's an absolute experience to me. I feel it in my body, I hear it, and sometimes it is absolutely incredibly challenging. And I know we've got a short time. I want to tell you something that really happened to me that was incredible recently. I have a clients internationally. I had this beautiful woman who contacted me from the other side of the world in Europe, and she had a friend who had been killed by a shark, eaten by a white pointer shark. And he was also in another country. I'm not going to say the exact countries because I don't want to I want to respect these people's privacy because they're both in a particular industry, and I don't want to, I want to respect their confidentiality. But one of the most paralyzing moments for me was when she had a session with me. One of the deepest fears we were raised in Australia and we have shark attacks like in California, but we have a lot of sharks in the Australian waters and it's a very big deal. We have a lot of shark attacks here. And I was raised by my mother who was always very afraid of sharks and she wouldn't go in very far and she didn't want us to go in very far. So I am not really, I love the beach, but I don't really go in the water so much because in the back of my mind is this little, boom, boom, boom of the Jaws movie,
Yeah.
So what happened this day in a nutshell was that he came in spirit, this man who'd just been attacked, and it was on the news and everything. It was a very big deal, but I didn't know about it. I didn't hear anything about it. Anyway, and I didn't know him. So when he came in, and when people in spirit do come in, one of the things that happens is that I relive their trauma. Well, the very next moment, I could hardly breathe, and I was literally seeing the experience as he was living it, and it was the most strikingly graphic, challenging experience for me personally. Why it happened and what happened after that is the thing that my mind couldn't get around because I had that particular fear as well. Was that he was really saying, I'm safe, I'm fine, everything's fine, I'm joyous, I'm meant to be here, it was meant to happen. And it was really a battle for me for the moment, to be able to see, and I certainly did because I'm a professional and we're trained in doing this. But the reason I'm sharing this is because we can overcome anything if we're open enough and courageous enough to see beyond the limited version of possibility. And if I have learned anything from being able to see into spirit and communicate with others and work through time-space and being, locating myself in other time frames when my body and my part of my consciousness is clearly in the moment, is that there is so much more than what we know. We haven't even begun to understand what we're capable of. Energy transmissions, I've worked with people with cancer and it's, gone into remission and sometimes not. Sometimes people are leaving the planet. And so it's really about being able to see that this is a very different experience of therapy for people who've gone through this stress and trauma. And certainly for your beautiful partner to know that he is safe and to be able to talk with you about the possible triggers for him, for you to be able to be really aware of the things that you can do in the moment that might be possible, not the full-blown version of it, but to really be developing what I call a witness state for each other, to be just really mindful of what his needs might be and your needs are. And that's what relationship is about, being consciously loving and being able to really be aware of each other's needs and to also take responsibility when things happen. But in this case, to really see what he might need for those triggers not to be there and to work through time-space to be able to see what that shock was. And I'm sure he's working with a therapist because I would hope that he is, because it's an incredible trauma to go through what he's gone through.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's staying at the Oregon VA right now for Veterans Assistance for PTSD, and he's going to be there for 4 months. We just got married in October, and then not even two weeks later, he had to go away for 4 months. But it's very beneficial for him because he's gonna get some good therapy from that, and it'll be the first time that he's being treated for that.
Susan, I wanted to also get in very quickly that it's really interesting to me that you both have that template of the world being unsafe, and that's what's brought you together. So if you look back through your patterning and experience and his patterning experience, you'll see that your little selves are needing to have a world that's safe and loving and peaceful. And so maybe commit to that, to seeing what you might do for each other to overturn that. And I suspect that's why our souls have come together.
Oh, absolutely. I know we're definitely here to do work together, to heal each other. It's definitely a healing relationship. We've been through a lot. Like we started dating January of this year, and we got married in October, so it was very quick. And I have known him for 3 years, but as soon as I'd seen him walk through the door at a party, I knew right then and there that somehow, some way, we were going to work together, be together.
Blessings to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, wow. I can't believe it's been an hour already. Wow. But I want to thank you so much, Elizabeth. Gosh, I could talk to you for several hours.
I'm sure we could. I'm sure I'd love that.
That'd be great. So we're going to have to schedule another interview very soon.
Fabulous. I'd love that. And I just wanted to say that if anybody would like to know where that they can purchase my book, certainly they can buy the ebook from my new website, which is Wings of Wisdom, WINGS of Wisdom.tv, as in television. They can buy the ebook there. And if they'd like to order a book, you can go onto Amazon.com or Book Depository or Barnes & Noble and order it from there. At the moment that it says it's temporarily out of stock, you can actually place an order. It's actually available, but they just haven't updated their system, so you can place orders through that.
That's wonderful. It's a fabulous read, and I just can't thank you enough for being on tonight. And I would absolutely love to have you back on again. You certainly gave me a lot of healing in the last hour, and I want to thank you very, very much.
Oh, well, that's a great joy to me. You know, that's the great gift of any situation for me, that we can share something that is reflecting your light and your truth, and you know, creating inspiring conversation that can awaken and uplift people. And I wish everybody listening a beautiful journey forward, and to know your true magnificence in as many moments as that you can possibly allow.
Thank you so very much. I can't praise you enough. And, you know, once again, Elizabeth Robinson's new book is There Are No Goodbyes. And that is very true. And I want to wish everybody good night and many blessings to Elizabeth and everybody out there that's listening. I'm going to play a quick commercial and a quick song by Joe Giglio, the Metaphysically Speaking song that you heard at the very beginning of the show. And I will be right back. So, Elizabeth, I'm going to call you after the show.
Thank you, Susan, and much love to everybody.
Thank you. Hey everybody, welcome back to Transitions to Transformation Radio. I have a lovely sponsor. Her name is Tammy, and her website is IamGettingSmaller.com. So if anybody wants to be slimmer for the holidays or after the holidays, consider getting a wrap party. And here's Tammy's commercial. Many blessings and have a good night, everybody.
Have you tried that crazy wrap thing? Everyone is getting wrapped to tighten, tone, and firm. And you can too. Get your wraps up to 50% off today as a loyal customer. Just visit IamGettingSmaller.com. The first loyal customer each day is entered for a free wrap. Need extra Christmas cash? Who doesn't? Join as a distributor. Join now. IamGettingSmaller.com. Independent. It works distributor. 1-855-512-WRAP. Toll free. 1-855-512-WRAP. IamGettingSmaller.com.